Welcome everybody.
Hello. We're on already?
We are on. We're on right now.
Well, hello everyone. I'm
Johnny. Yeah.
Yep.
So, hey. So welcome everybody. We are doing this episode of DOATEC Academy with special guests CJ Requiem, Corpusant CA.
I still need a new one. I'm getting a new one right now.
You should just be called A.K.A, man, because you have so many aliases.
I will totally take that. I'm using A.K.A on my next one.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
And special guest, second place at SCR, Mr. Hajin Shinobi. He's going to share with us his insights on the concept of spacing. So we will talk about that for this first hour here. And then, you know, hour number 2, we'll get into something a little different for DOA talk. Anyway, everybody, go ahead and say hi.
Hello, everybody. Hello, stream.
That's also hello to Johnny, who is being very quiet.
Oh,
but he's
yeah,
always
hey.
in the conversation.
I'm here.
Hey.
I'm not trying to step on our gas.
He is doing like technical work, so you know he's giving me if he wants
the man of men. So I just want to say something really cool right now. This is completely off topic, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
I finally get to use a stick again.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, I'm finally back on a stick, and it's so nice. I mean, I'm sucking now because I haven't played on a stick in 6 months, but it's just nice to be there. So Hajin, let's start with you, since you are so clearly known as a spacing guy.
I guess so.
Yeah, you are. Tell us if we're gonna start from the bare basics, like kind of what's your super bare minimum stripped down definition of spacing, and then CJ can add in some stuff too if he needs to, and how you guys feel about it.
That's kind of tough to answer in one. Like it's kind of tough to get it one answer because there's different forms of spacing. Like you've got spacing.
Okay.
You got footsies, which are two totally different things. But as far as like spacing goes, I guess to generalize it, it's basically just having the opponent playing like to your tune, like basically forcing them to play to your rhythm, to take control of the match, take good pacing in the match, and keeping the momentum in your favor.
So so here's where there's a little bit of I can already tell, you know, people are going to ask this question, because when you hear the term of spacing, you are thinking distance. You are thinking, you know, measuring space or occupying space in between you and your opponent. And you talked a lot about rhythm and dictating, you know, them playing at your pace. And so, if you could talk a little bit about the relationship between the distance and dictating pace and rhythm, I think that'd be really helpful.
Alright, so when you're trying to measure your space, it's like I was telling you the other day when I was over there for the weekend. When you're trying to measure the distance between the space and like the moves your character has, it comes down to you really understanding the character you're playing. You have to understand their moves, and you have to understand. You basically have to look at. You can't look at a single move as just one certain thing. Like Ayane 3X plus K, the very long range tracking mid kick she has. Obviously when you look at that move, you already know it's got some good spacing application to it. But a lot of people will generally assume that it's just like a poke. You don't want to look at, for that move, for example, you don't want to look at that as just a poke. Like you want to look at that as, you know, just the move itself and what can you really use it for. Like you can use it for a poke, you can use it for a counter poke. You can use it as a way to try to control a certain amount of space between you and the opponent. You can kind of use it as a keep away tool. Like you can use it as so many different things, and the only way you'll really understand that you can use it for so many different things is understanding why you can do it.
Okay, so why can you do it? Tell me things about that. Talk about pokes.
So I can use it for a poke. So I can use it for a poke because the damage on the move being just a single hit strike is actually pretty high. It's
well,
26.
let's talk about pokes in general.
Okay.
Not just that specific one you just referred to. Let's talk about pokes in general and kind of their use in controlling space and dictating tempo.
Alright, so like pokes in general, you're gonna have pokes of different speed and different ranges. Obviously, you're not going to use. You're gonna have different pokes of different speed, different ranges, and they're all going to play accordingly to they're all going to play accordingly to the speed and the range. Like you're not going to use a move that's like you're not going to use like an 18 frame poke up close because it's slow. You're going to use something that's more along the lines of 9 to 15, I would say. 9 to 15 frames is something you generally want to use when you're a little closer to the opponent.
Okay, so I would say there's probably a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Because I wanted to bring it back. It was kind of an important point, and I don't think your question didn't quite get answered on why we're talking about like rhythm and tempo, right?
Yeah. Please.
So,
yeah.
Here's the thing: if you look at a match, let's just say your average DOA match between two not very good players, right? It almost always has the same rhythm, right? Same tempo. They're in each other's faces. It's like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Everyone's kind of hitting the same kind of aggression for each other, and it's just a constant, forward smack movement, right?
Yeah.
The spacing is all like the movement, but not necessarily limited movement. Abilities that you have to like be able to say either by like counter poking or by being able to do a bunch of running in and running out, like I'm just kind of doing Sonic Fox, like jumping in really quick, like that, running in constantly, to like make it more a completely different speed that way. You can kind of use that so I can make it really slow and dragged out so every decision is really calculated. Or I can then suddenly run in, like, and make the decision speed up much faster depending on where I put my body next to yours.
Yeah.
I think that's a good distinction, or I mean that's a good clarification that is really important to understanding the relationship of distance to rhythm. So you were going to get into pokes then, and let's talk about kind of in a general sense without trying to get too much into frame data, what the function of pokes are in relation to that distance rhythm conversation that we're kind of having, and then we can move on to like what you think can like identify what a good poke is, how to find that in your character and whatnot, and maybe then we could get into some frame data if need be, but right now let's just talk about kind of the general function of pokes.
Generally, something that can be utilized as a pretty good poke is something that's normally, it can be pretty safe. It can have good damage to it. It can even be something that's midstream. Like, okay, CJ's playing Kokodo, for example. So Kokodo, for example, has like the P2KP and the PK string. Both of the follow-ups in the middle of those strings are actually pretty good that you can use for a poke, for the simple fact that they can be relatively safe in a way, simply because they have follow-ups to them. And you don't necessarily need them. When you're poking with somebody, you're just using that move as a poke, just as a way to open someone up, and basically just to see how someone basically responds to you poking at them. Do they like to block? Do they like to overblock? Do they want to like commit? Do they want to try to disrespect?
Right, or like right here, like I'm kind of like pushing at you right here to say, like, are you gonna run into my stuff, right?
Yeah.
If I see you're gonna run into my stuff, I'm gonna like completely exploit that really badly at you.
So pokes like, you get, hold on real quick. So kind of to simplify, you use pokes in a sense of you're kind of feeling things out, right? It's a little bit like sticking your toe in the water to test the temperature and see where it's at, and then after that you can react and make judgment calls based on kind of what you're seeing in the, from the other person.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I mean,
so
just from the round earlier on, he opened you up because he's been doing that poking safely. Like that's the reason why he took the round. Generally, he's just poking with PK just to see how you respond to it. He's not doing anything else. He's just using PK to poke at you and to open you up. See what you can do about it.
And to make it like bring it back to rhythm, I'm making your responses predictable, right? Like, I'm dragging you slowly into something where I'm going to control where you're going, and when you control where you're going, I can count essentially then do a better rhythm that'll be yours. Having controlled where yours going to go.
that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Okay, so you say you get your kind of, you're throwing pokes out there, right? Is there a process that you go into in the decision-making process? Like, you know, I hit you with one thing. Is it that you've kind of already decided, or not already decided, but already practiced or whatever, what follow-ups you have to that particular poke should it connect, and you kind of do it on reaction?
You can do it. You can do it that way. Okay, you can do it that way. Okay. Let's say he opened you up with the PK, right? And you happen to get stunned. Instead of him having a set practice, having a set of practice moves, he can basically just put out a different move, just to try to see how you react to the next move he does. So he does PK to you, and he decides to do Crocodile's. Let's say Crocodile's like 2K, like jab or 2K. Both of those responses are entirely different. One's low, one's high. If he goes with jab, you're going to be in a very deep stun, because in this game, jabs basically put you in the plus 35, basically a plus 30 stun. If you do a low, you're still going to be in a stun. I don't know how much Crocodile's stun is by heart, but you're going to be stunned either way. And if he goes with the 2K low, he has a follow-up, so you have to guess there. Or generally, you have to guess there, because he has a follow-up mid, or he can throw you, or he can free cancel, do whatever. So that's basically what he's doing right now. That's what he's showing right now. So he can do that just to test how you react to him, or he can practice whatever like set of practice moves he's actually practiced, which is basically like trying to flowchart a setup.
Yeah, you talked about. So let's talk about real quick. Define flowcharting a setup really quick, because everybody might not quite understand what that is.
So flowcharting the setup is basically just doing a setup that you've practiced in training mode. That's pretty much all that is. Like you're not doing a specific. You're not doing a mix-up. You're not doing the mix-up that you practice. You're not doing the mix-up based on how your opponent reacts. You're just flowcharting the setup you've been practicing in training mode. That's basically what that is.
So that's basically like, you know, if say for anybody you open up with, let's just say PP for the sake of argument, right? You open up with some little PP string, it connects, so you just go straight into the very next thing you know in that one combo. That's flowcharting, right? Yeah. Versus if you connect with PP, doing a mix-up is knowing that they might expect you to go straight into that combo you've been doing, but maybe you do something else instead. Because you're playing mind games with them, and you're expecting, you know, you're trying to dictate their reactions so that you could do something in opposition to their reactions. So you can, you know, hit them sideways or whatever. Yeah. So that's the mix-up side, right?
Yeah. So I was gonna say, like, I was gonna give him an example to use as a flowchart setup, but he switched to cleaner. I was gonna say if he can keep doing like the PK poking, and you know he gets his stun, he can go into 6KP and then go for critical burst. That's basically a flowchart setup right there.
So that's like going into your B&Bs, right?
Yeah,
like just always doing that.
Yeah, just flowcharting the bread and butter combo. He can do the same thing as Helena right now.
Yeah, like that kind of thing. You know, like really. Well, no, like you know, like jab. Like everyone can do that. You know. That's the flowchart.
Like, okay, the setup he did for critical burst, let's just generally assume like that's his flowchart setup that he did. Like that's what he's gonna do as a flowchart setup. That's his B&B. That's basically what a flowchart setup is.
Okay. So then let's talk about the mix-up game then, because mix-up matters. It's a part of this whole thing. What's the process of kind of developing mix-ups so that it's something that you can use kind of on the fly in the game? Because I mean, in the game, there's a degree to which, of course, you're obviously reacting and you're trying to provoke things and you're paying attention and trying to read stuff. But you're also not super actively sitting there thinking like, okay, I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna do this 30 seconds later, you know?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the process of kind of building mix-ups into your game and kind of how that affects the world of, you know, just the fight.
Okay, so specific to DOA, to know how to mix up better, you have to know which. It's a very good idea to get familiar with what moves your character has that can that'll stun the opponent. and which stuns do what. Like, because every stun in the game is not the same stun, obviously. Like, sit down stuns are not going to be the same as like a lip stun, for example.
I appreciate that, CJ, by the way.
If you want to know what a lip stun is, like you can do 4K with Lisa, for example, and that's basically like your lip stun. So when you're creating your mix-up, it's just really, when you're creating your mix-up in DOA, you're basically just trying to familiarize yourself with which moves do what stun and where, like high, mid, low, and understanding the critical stun threshold with your character. So that way you can get your damage based off.
If you could say that slightly less technical, and not because it's not good information, but more like we want to be able to have an accessible conversation to newcomers. So critical stun, things like that. These are things that are a little harder for somebody to understand if they haven't heard. I haven't played DOA for a long time. So if we can scale it down and then work our way back up to that, when you're talking about the way to kind of put together your mix-ups and train them, whatever you need to do to be able to kind of viably add mix-ups to your arsenal.
A simple way to say it is get familiar with putting your moves together, piecing your moves together the way you want them to be pieced together.
Okay, so it starts with like move recognition, right? Yeah. Knowing, for example, not just knowing how to use all your moves in the different situations, but knowing like the effect they're gonna have. So it matters to know if it's gonna put them in a sit-down stun, like a deep stun versus a light stun, right? If you don't know the frames of it, which you can find the frames doing the screen info.
Yeah.
But at least you can try to figure out, by going into training mode and setting them to slow escape or to block or whatever, right? And figure out, okay, if I do this, like they can get out of that really quickly and I don't have follow-ups. Whereas if I do this, they're going to be in a deeper stun. But then there's usually a trade-off, right? Because some moves that'll give you deeper stun often have longer startup times. And it's not always the case, but tell me, because I know one of the things we talked about before is that it's kind of fascinating. Like when I'm already in stun with Lisa, for example, if I just tap neutral P, her jab does a lot of stun.
Yeah.
When you're already working in the stun game. And so that's why it goes back to what you were saying about really knowing your moves. And so like, one of the things you could do for that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of go into training mode and set your moves to be counter hits.
Yeah, so that way you can just
and that can help give you an idea. Yeah, and just like go through the move list and know. And it's like, it's not a perfect indicator of straight stun game, but it's a fairly similar representation, just to know like on the big scale, this move isn't going to actually do a whole lot for me and give me a chance to get other things out, whereas this move is totally going to give me time to get things out before they can recover.
It's actually okay to practice your stun game that way, turning on counter hit and practicing your stun game that way, because most of the stuns you get in this game come from counter hit anyway. There are moves that produce neutral hit stuns, but most of the time you're fishing for counter hits as you're trying to open someone up. So it's actually
counter hits okay. And to note really quick, sorry.
Hold on. Yeah. No, CJ, get that point in.
Yeah. The one thing I will say also, just if you, it's almost like even among moves where the neutral hit stuns you can land on neutral hit, they're almost always the same stuns. Like you never have like a counter hit only on like critical bursts are you gonna see like a counter hit exclusive stun or anything like it. So it's like at max like 3 character moves in your arsenal are gonna be different from that. Like everything else you just are gonna see that way.
That's good to know.
So it's like
good to
know
because that makes it.
Yeah, it's like basically a non-issue.
That's good.
Yeah,
okay, so
there's that, and there's also moves that there's also moves that usually give a sit down stun on counter hit rather than a neutral hit.
Oh yeah, there's a few of those. Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah, and there's moves that'll do the same thing on crouching opponents as well.
Right.
Okay. So it's funny because
but it's like you said, it's very specific. It's very specific to few moves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways that the moves function, and that's kind of, or it can be, difficult for newer people to comprehend and think that that's just too much information that they need to learn. And it's kind of, honestly, it really is though, just like what it takes to go from being scrub to being like really competitive, or even, you know, mediocre to competitive. Like, it's something I haven't had time to really do, and it shows in my fighting when I'm in tournaments. Like, people who have just like a better command of dynamics of everything do better than me, because they get to exploit things like that.
And you know, I do want to make a note that I want to make a note about when we talked about flowchart earlier.
Yeah.
When you're practicing like flowchart setups in training mode, that's actually fine to do, because when you do it, it actually lets you learn. It actually lets you get familiar with the moves that you're learning for your setup. It actually lets you get familiar with what those stuns can do. So even though you're just trying to set up rather than just trying to learn a mix-up, you can maybe later on say, hey, now that I understand what these few moves I've been using for this setup actually do, maybe I can string them in a different way. Maybe I can try this out with different moves that I have.
Yeah, okay.
And so then your mindset is going to start going into wanting to actually learn how to mix up your moves and your moves for different stuns, and for basically just trying to opening up a blocking opponent rather than just, you know, I hit them, I should go ahead and just try to get the critical stun and go for critical bursts.
Yeah, it's kind of, so when you learn how to play jazz piano, as it happens.
I'm loving where this is going already.
No, I promise it's relevant.
We gotta hear this. We gotta hear this.
No, I promise it's relevant. Like, it's absolutely this point. You start by learning, like, basic rote chords, right? You start by learning, like, like really obvious stuff. You don't actually practice jazz by starting on improv, right? You never, like, just start doing things out of your head, right? It's only once you have total familiarity of all of, like, the basic concepts and, like in your basic chords, you're going to be able to do any improvisation at all. Basically, DOA is exactly like that. You're not going to practice improv right away. You're going to be a flowchart player first. You know, always. That improv comes naturally from, like, having exposure. That's simple.
So that's a really good point, because when you're playing this game, it's really easy to get frustrated because you can't do advanced things sooner than you would like. And this is the old adage that comes from, like, every amazing winning coach in every sport ever. Like, you have to have the fundamentals down so hard that they are second nature and you never have to think about them. And it's not until you have that you're able to freestyle a little bit. And mix-ups are a form of freestyling once you know, burn some combos into your head and learn, like, some of the more simple dynamics of the game. So let's move in a little bit to defending against spacing, and I want to specifically, or not defending against, but dealing with an opponent who's spacing you out. And I want to specifically make sure it's clear that at this point I'm referring to spacing as somebody who is not entirely playing keep away, but if I'm going to call spacing the opposite of aggression right now. Somebody who is clearly trying to play a counter-punch game versus someone who's trying to come in and make you, you know, trying to be aggressive and make you panic to open you up. Somebody that's going to make you come to them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you get through somebody who's spacing in that way, somebody who's trying to make you make a mistake so that they can counter-punch. How do you make it work?
Okay, like, so I know how to play that style really well. I know how to fight that style really well as well, like, just by playing people who also do that. So, something I usually tell people who's trying to, like, improve their spacing is, when you're playing someone who's just clearly trying to play on the other side of the screen, if you want to test out how they try to play defense, or if they actually have any kind of defense, or if they panic when you get to their face or something, simply just run up to them and block and see what happens there. Like, and you want to do this because you want to see how soon the opponent presses a button once you get into a certain space. Like, how much space does it take for the opponent to press a button? I mean, everyone has it, even I do, but everyone has a certain amount of range where they feel they can use a certain button, or they feel they need to put a certain button out in order to make you not run in for free on them. That's basically the easiest way you can try to figure out how to get inside someone's spacing. Another thing is,
oh, go ahead.
Another thing you want to do is try to gain their rhythm when they're spacing. Even if they don't have the most calculated rhythm, if they just have a rhythm where, it's like I said before, they're going to hit a button when you get inside a certain amount of space. If they're hitting the button, like a certain amount of space, see like where CJ is right now. Like every time you get mid range, he's putting out the 4K.
Yeah.
If you get a little closer to him, he's likely going to hit a faster button on you. See? Like he did 60K, like 11 frame mid. So now he's basically, like, right now all he's doing is just forcing you to respect his range with 2 different moves. Like, that's all he's committing to. Like, he's not committing to anything else. And he doesn't have to because you haven't done anything about it.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Like, what do I need to do about it?
So, like, here's how I would say it. Because actually, I have a fair amount of practice with this as someone who is mained a character with, like, no conventional buttons. You know what I mean? Like, when we talk about conventional buttons, we mean, like, buttons that, like, have a long range across the screen, right? I pick Elena, right? Character has, like, she has, like, she has one really good long range move. It's from back turn to her low sweep. It's really good. It's not worse, but it's still really good. And otherwise, she doesn't have a lot of really good ranges, right? Like, I back away from, and it's like this kind of stuff, and like here, and like, this is nothing. So what I end up doing a lot is like, I'll look at where they're going, and I'll see where they start trying to hit buttons, right? And every time I'm gonna try and run into a space that makes them uncomfortable, right? Where either I can whiff punish them so I smack the wrong button for doing it. So if he like tried to kick me right here and just whiff, I would just, like, well, I know a little too close there. But like if you, like right there, in theory, I'd be able to hit that, right? Trying to actually stimulate it is imperfect, but that's the idea, right? Like I would hit him with that when he whiffs. And the same idea goes, like, and so you kind of run in, right? Like if someone's trying to keep you out with some buttons like this, like, and if he like runs in my face right then when I'm like whiffing, as opposed to actually doing anything about it, then I'm gonna be in like a lot of negative and a lot of trouble, right? So like I'm gonna, like right here, like I might, well, see finish string. If he didn't, I would have just strained him, like right here. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of people would finish the string right there instead. But you get the idea. Or you just kind of want to dash in and out and like try and end up somewhere where they're not happy, right? Either by forcing them to go a little like overextend so you can punish them, strictly speaking, like right here. See that whiff right there? Like it's my turn then, right? Like he's so close to me at that point and he's at recovering frames. Like, he can't hit a button without getting counter hit. There's no way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like right here, like I can throw him for that, you know.
If I'm gonna break it down and simplify, one of the tactics you're saying is to try to rush in and make it look like you're gonna attack, and they kind of stop just outside of their range.
Yeah.
So they throw whatever their counter attack would be, whatever their spacing move is, and then you try to hit them on recovery.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier about the run up and block thing, the run up and block strategy.
So no, it's interesting because you have 2 things, right? You have run up and block, where you're gonna be a block stun, but you know if they do something stupid like finish
you don't have to run up and block. I was just saying, like, just to generalize it, like just to generalize it and just block because that's your safer option. What he's saying is also the same thing, but it's just. I just say run up and block because that's just what I say. But it's basically the same idea, though. It's the same idea.
Yeah, it is.
Well, this is what I'm saying, though. There's a slight difference, and not that it's. Anyway, the slight difference that I think is kind of worth some note is the concept of working within their range of, you know, ability to hit you and staying outside of that range.
Yeah.
And that both of those could be viable options.
Yeah, they both are.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Huh.
Because that kind of matters, right? Like, because I mean, I'll say like when I'm playing, I'm afraid. I'm totally terrified.
Right. Yeah, because here's the thing.
Get within that range.
Right. I see what you're saying. So the thing about like when you can really run up and block in someone's face, it'll tell you a lot, right? Because like if you try to run up and block, well, I shouldn't have picked Elena for this. Because I've got to run, like as Elena, I've got to like adjust to you. There's no way I can't keep you out with this character. But like, so like with a lot of people who like with me, right? Like I'm sticking out buttons, right? Like, I have a calculated strategy or some kind of strategy, to like keep you out with like a lot of those characters, right? Like I'm thinking about like attacking you like at a certain range every time you get up in my face. Like I'm actually kind of doing it now. I'm just noticing. Yeah, I fully am. Like little buttons right there. And the thing about it is like, if you were and that's not. Like, so with someone like that, you wouldn't literally run up and block them, right? Because you would get hit, like you would, or like you wouldn't get there in time. That you would end up like you couldn't actually get in their face. With some people though, if you try and run up and block in their face, and you can actually do it, like if I get all the way up here with you, like you, and I didn't get hit at all, that tells me the person just isn't like has no reflexes to what I'm doing, right? And then that's information, right? Like all of a sudden it's But in the process of like running up that first time, and I see you stick out a button, like right here, that's information, right? Information.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't get there, like that's
So that's actually really interesting because this kind of goes back to a big point. That's kind of been the theme of all the CJ talks. It's that you're constantly on the lookout for information and kind of how important that is to the game, right? Because this is what's, as I'll say as a novice player, this is what's kind of frustrating is, I'll go in and I'll say, okay, I want to do this, right? I want to come in, I want to block your thing, I want to be able to throw you after this or whatever, right? You have some game plan with how you think things are going to go. And if it doesn't go according to plan, then obviously things went wrong. But what you're saying right now, basically to me, is it's not that things went wrong, it's that you learned information. And that's a really big difference in the mentality while you're playing the game, because taking this information stance is one, what helps you be cool, right, in the face of, I don't want to say failed attempts, but like, not taking damage when you're intending to cause damage, let's say.
Yeah.
But it also allows you to then exploit that information, ideally, later.
Right.
And that's one thing as newer players, as people who are kind of novices or people who get worked up at tournaments and are dealing with the ceiling, you got to make sure you pay a really big a portion of your attention to the concept that like every interaction in the game is an opportunity for you to learn more information that you can then apply to the next interaction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny,
you have to learn your
things...
opponent's habits when you're playing against them.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, see that?
Yeah, you hear people say things like involuntarily, like when they're playing and they're like not even necessarily raging, but they're just kind of like playing someone online. They'll kind of say things like, "Oh, I see you," or like, "Oh, I get it," like things like that. Because really good players will just kind of pick up. They'll have either through experience or just kind of like through analysis, depends on the player. They'll kind of get an idea of like what kind of person you are, what kind of strategy you're playing, what options I'm going to have based on your habits. And they'll just kind of start clicking on that, and that applies to absolutely everything, right? So there's almost nothing in the game where you can't immediately... You'll start hearing it. You can actually hear players start thinking about these things as they start playing, just by the way they talk.
Yeah.
You can even kind of like if you even pay attention to your opponent when they're playing you, you can tell how they're going to counter adjust sometimes because they'll give it away. They're like, oh, I see this, I'm going to respond to this, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what you care about? Here we go. Right?
Yeah. That's really interesting. So let's talk some more spacing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about characters in this game? And do you think that you could play a strong spacing game with any character, or do you think that there are some characters that are more suited to it? And if so, what characters are those?
I would say...
I space Helena.
He spaces with Helena? Okay, let's say this.
And by the way, anybody
Helena's
who's
not a
listening...
character...
CJ drops the H on Helena, but, like, he means Helena.
Helena. Oh, yeah, it's the French, sorry. It's the French.
No, it's no problem. I'm just saying, like, for anyone else who's... We're not talking Street Fighter, we're talking about Helena right here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's, it's French pronunciation of Helena. Okay.
It's all good. So go ahead, Hajin was saying some stuff.
Okay, so, as we know, Helena is not really, spacing is not really her forte, but CJ can do that with her. And it's not because she's really that capable of it, it's because he's capable of doing it. It's because his fundamentals allow him to do that, because he's basically figured out how his character's buttons work for those situations. And it's like he was saying earlier, when he's moving forward and then he's backing away, he's basically just trying to gain information on the opponent so he can know what button or buttons he can use for his situation to whip punish you,
so
or
let's
even
be clear.
Just punish with a throw.
Let's be clear really quickly. When you say buttons, you're referring to moves in her moveset, right?
Yeah, I'm referring to moves.
Yeah, it's not literally just, he hits any punch or kick. It's that he knows her 7K and the difference from the 7K and the 2K and the 4K and the 4P and all that stuff. Like, he knows all the different things. And like we said before, in case you didn't notice, the numbers in front of the K or the P, that's completely related to if you had like a keypad and it went from bottom to top, left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 5's neutral, 1 is down, back, etc. So that's the whole point, is that CJ just has such a command over his character's moveset that even though his character's moveset by itself is not super lending itself well to spacing, he knows how to space with it.
Yeah. He understands his character really well. Like, that, his character is basically like a second language to him at this point in the game.
Yeah. It's so funny because it's if anybody has ever watched Initial D, one of the things that happens in Initial D is they constantly talk about Takumi, the main character, as being able to control the car as if it's his arms and legs, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the mindset you need to get into with your character as far as knowing their moveset. You should never have to think about what moves you're doing. You should know exactly what move you want to do at what time and not have to worry about execution issues or anything like I do when I do deja vus, etc. So that kind of answers one question then. Technically, you can have a strong spacing game with anybody if your fundamentals are on point. But let's talk about what characters in this game are more suited to spacing. If you're coming from a different game, if you're coming from a Street Fighter or a Tekken or whatever, and you tend to like spacing characters, if you play Marvel and you play Morgan and you like keeping people out, you might want to come in and try to work your way in with a spacing strategy. What characters in this game lend themselves well to spacing? Okay,
so my 3 characters that I play in tournament, Ayane, Momiji, and Hayate. Well, Hayate now.
Yeah.
All 3 of those characters are very capable of that style of play. They're all very capable of spacing. They're very capable of playing an aggressive style of spacing. They're very capable of playing a neutral style of spacing. They're very capable of playing a defensive style of spacing. And if you want me to go into the difference between all 3, I can definitely do that. But
let's do that after we get through the rest of the characters that are good with spacing.
Okay.
And then we'll go into the difference between like aggressive versus defensive spacing.
Okay, so you have those 3. You have another character like Raito,
and
for
CJ,
example.
Feel free to jump. I mean, like, 'cause look,
I'll
we're watching Lei Feng versus Tina right now. Like, Tina's a grappler. Like, she's not really. You can't really do a whole lot with her far away, right?
Well, spacing's pretty
good.
Like, it's like medium. It's like not. It's very suitable. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Okay. You're right. It's like it's okay, but it's not like a strength of hers. And one of the things that
I would say if you want to play like a good spacing game with Tina in particular, you'd actually be okay.
Explain.
Yeah, she does. Like she has like she has like stuff like that. She has like the
she's got
what's
4K
like the
as well.
forward like jumping rolling punch, which is a good whip punish. She has the roll kick, which is a good whip punish. Yeah, like well, I mean, like that that move individually too, not necessarily with the roll. But I'm trying to think of like she has this punch. Like what is that? It's like a dive punch thingy, a forward quarter circle forward punch, something like that. Yeah.
That move.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually not too bad. It's the only downside to it is that it's throw punishable. That's the only downside to it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's counter hit. Like if you see someone like mashing, you can smack them out at least.
Yeah.
So she's got tools. She's got like 4K. She can kind of play a runaway game if she wants to. Like she's actually got it.
She does have a runaway game. That's
so
a good point.
I would say she's kind of like high mid spacing game. It's pretty good.
Really? That's good. Yeah. Okay. So who else has that game? And so one of the things we'll talk about when we move on from characters is we'll talk about like aggressive versus defensive, and we'll talk about runaway game. But who else do you think has good spacing tools?
Lisa has amazing spacing tools.
Hashtag Team Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa's actually really annoying to fight when she's spacing because it's like I told you before.
Is crazy.
Her 7K is hard to get in on because it's one of those moves that the damage on it is really high for neutral base damage, and the move is actually not that slow, and it's a mid. Like it's not a high, it's not a low, it's a mid. Like
it's a mid. I think it's 14 or 15 frames.
I think it's 16.
It might be 16. It has knockback and she steps away. But you could also go straight into Carrera, which is her, like when she runs back at the opponent, and that cuts frames. So you have all these different things that you could do with it. And like if they read mid-kick, they read mid-kick. And I think it actually has decently high priority on things. So it's like, it's a really good tool of hers to use that just gives you, and not only that, if you do Carrera out of her 7K, and her 7K, I'll do it here in a second, but that's her basically, it's not quite a cartwheel backwards, because that's more of her 4HK, but it's like she does a backflip slash kick thing while keeping her hands on the ground. I'm going to do it here in a second. But it also has a ton of options out of it. I could do that and just leave it static. I could do that and go into Carrera, and then from there you got this. You got you could come in and do all your running moves, where you do that or whatever, right? Some of the other things she could do out of it is you could go straight into that and do her moonsault. You could do that and do another mid kick, which actually, even though it feels like it takes a long time after, will connect into a combo. It's crazy. Like, it's such a useful move. And with characters, you're kind of looking for moves like that, right? Moves that you can use almost as like counterattack pokes when people are coming in, but then give you a lot of options for what you could do after which, so that you could work it directly into a mix-up, or at least have like different avenues for getting damage out of it.
Lisa also is like, indeed. The other thing about Lisa, she has, I want to say, one of, if not the, I don't know, best like runaway spacing games, because like do quarter circle forward kick into the back turn, and the runaway on that. That is just untouchable, man. Like, and she's got a bunch of them like that. Trying to track her down when she wants to do stuff like that.
She could do her
like that. All of those safe moves.
It's crazy because like this is 20 frames, I think. Which is not, it's like not a particularly fast move, but one, it's her critical burst, so it's not going to be pretty fast. But doing it in the back turn and the range on that, like I can hit you from really far with that, and then back turn away, and look at like the distance I created on block. Like you're not hitting me from that. If I hit you if I try to do this at max distance, if I'm in here and I do this and you block it, like you can't follow up. You can't follow up with a throw or anything like that.
No. It's completely bonkers.
Gruff and I, we kind of like refer to Lisa as a slight lesser Ayane in the fact that I want to say Lisa's spacing game is actually pretty much on par with Ayane in ways. The main difference.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I always think of Lisa as like. It's just got like a better runaway spacing game than Ayane. But Ayane kind of has better like every other kind of spacing game. Like Lisa has trouble getting in ways that Ayane doesn't. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Ayane can kind of move forward a little better. But the keep away on Lisa is crazy. Like, how do you get in on that one character?
That's why I said matchups against Lisa are really annoying, because she has those tools to really. It makes it that difficult for you to get in on her, because it's like I said, 7K, which is like a single example, but that's just one of the single examples she has. It's so hard. It's so difficult to deal with.
The 12-frame move.
Yeah. She's
and
got
like
that
if you hit with this, hold up. If you hit with this.
Yeah, I can't do it.
I'm gonna hit. I want to hit. Don't block.
Okay.
If you hit with this, you get a big knockback, which is, I mean, you knock him down to the ground, which is good for, you know, obviously several reasons. You get a knockback or a knockdown to the ground, which means if you want to come in and start being aggressive after that, you can do it. But also, like, it's 12 frames. Like, this comes out so quickly to be able to use on reaction. And not that this needs to become like a Lisa tutorial stream or whatever, but these are the types of moves you're looking for. It's kind of what we talked about.
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah. So go ahead and talk about different. You know, we were talking about different people and all that stuff. We can move away from Lisa.
Elliot's got a good spacing game.
Yeah, Elliot's spacing game is actually pretty good.
His pretty good. Kasumi's is pretty good.
Character. Kasumi, Rig. Hayabusa is pretty good.
Tell me about Rig.
Is one of those characters. Okay, Rig.
Tell me a little bit about Rig, because I don't see enough Rigs, and it's interesting to hear that you think that he could be he obviously has tools for, you know, spacing or whatever.
Well, one of the Rig mains in the U.S. Hoodless, he plays a more fundamentally solid style with Rig, and he's figured out how to play a more I want you to approach me style with him when he chooses to do so. Rig has some very good lows. Rig's lows are actually pretty scary on him. His Twitch plus K is like 16 frames. It's kind of hard to see sometimes, and it comes out of strings. He's also got another low, like his 1P that can low profile since it's a crouching low, and it has a safe follow, so a safe follow up mid.
Yeah.
He's got other moves. His 5K, it comes out at 13 frames, and on block, it's frame advantage. On hit, it's frame advantage. His A.K. is a stun. It's a 12 frame mid kick. It's a stun. It's a launch on counter hit. He's got plenty of other moves that let him play that style. His walk speed's very good. That's also something neat.
In terms of his actual spacing game, though, yeah, but in terms of like controlling space, he also has and I don't know Rig's notation well, so you're going to forgive me if I'm like not knowing Rig's notation.
Well, let's we don't have to get too deep into Rig anymore. He has a lot of like really good like I was talking about Rig really quick because I think it's important to note. He has really like big buttons, right? Like out of his stance, he has like a kick that's about half screen. That's really solid. He has like, linear space, and then he has some moves that are really like safe pokes that he can run away from immediately. So like if you hit you with it, it's gonna be like very like light neutral, and he can immediately get away. Like you can't really like Lisa, but not as good. You can't really follow up on him right away. You've got to work for it. So he's got a lot of that kind of spacing game going on too. Okay, so let's you know, if you have any more people to add to the list, let's go ahead and throw them in, and then we'll move to the difference between like runaway, aggressive, and defensive spacing. Kokoro belongs there, for sure. Yeah, Kokoro, Raido. Lei is actually underrated this way. People say she's a bad spacing character, but I disagree. Who? What character? Lei. Oh yeah, Lei is actually pretty good. Like don't get into the big debate about that. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna talk. I'm just saying that. Jan's is good. I'm not gonna talk about Jan. Jan Lee. And then Christie's known as being pretty good as well. Yeah, she is actually. Phase 4 is decent. Phase 4, it's like I don't want to get too complicated on that. It's like yes, but that's always phase 4. It's like she has a few buttons she can use, but they're good. But
she doesn't have Kasumi buttons overall. Like, yeah.
And they're so rigid. Like, they're so stuck. Like, you hit that button and it's like the one button you've got. It's so sad.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move on then.
Yeah.
Let's move on to let's talk about aggressive spacing, and then we'll move on to defensive, and then runaway.
Sure.
So tell me about aggressive spacing and what that means to both of you guys.
Okay. Actually, CJ, you can go ahead first. I want to hear your side, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah. Okay. Like for me, when I think about aggressive spacing, I always think first about and there are other ways to do this with like longer pokes, but I think about the people who are kind of having to play the game that I was talking about earlier, the ones where you're kind of running in and like seeing like where their buttons are, and immediately trying to like I just thought something about having to do something about it right away, for lack of a better term, where so I'm kind of going in here, I'm waiting for you to whiff, you're not whiffing. At some point I'm gonna win on you, oh you whiff right there, okay, like I'm running in, right? Like it's a reactionary kind of game, so when you get in, you can play the fully aggressive game you want it, right? Like, so it's constantly, Sonic Fox is a master of this. Like, you see that kid play this game, like he will like run in for free. Like you're pressing any button and he's in your face all of a sudden, or nothing.
So that's the thing, it's like really aggressively trying to chase recovery frames, right? Like, so you do a move, you hit punch or whatever, right? You start at the beginning. There's startup frames, which is basically like, when you're winding up for the punch. There's the active frames where you actually hit the punch and, where it actually can cause damage. And then there's all this shit where, like, you're pulling your arm back or whatever, the animation is finishing, but it can't cause damage anymore. That's recovery frames. And, Sonic Fox, and like you said, this kind of aggressive style of spacing is like really intently jumping in as soon as you can, as soon as you think that they're going to be in that recovery phase where they do one move and you think, okay, they're in recoil from this kick or this punch or whatever, and you're ready to attack them right now. And looking for that, like jumping in on the first opportunity, like less feeling out and more like, I know this move, I'm diving in now.
Right. And some people who have aggressive spacing styles, don't necessarily run in right away, but that's the plan. Like, at some point you're gonna be running in. Like, whether
they're trying to get to that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So then let's talk about what would separate that from like defensive spacing.
And I want to hear how you contrast that with like runaway spacing, because they are different, and it's important to kind of explain it, and a little complicated, honestly. So
defensive spacing, obviously you're playing defense, but you're also playing, you're not totally playing keep away, as you said. You're playing in a way to where you're not totally running away. You're playing to hold your ground, but you're also not playing an aggressive style either. Like, you want to tell your opponent, I'm ready to react or counter-react to what you plan to do to get in, but I'm also not totally going to run away either. I'm still going to try to do certain things to force you to respond to what I want you to do. Wait, let me say that again. I'm sorry. I'm going to force you to respond to me in ways that you don't want to respond to me, so I can punish you for doing that. One of the things I do a lot as Ayane is, obviously I'm using her integrated movement. When I get in certain ranges, I'm moving back and forth between her front turn and her back turn stances a lot. And it's solely because I want the opponent to come in and hit me. But I'm also doing that at a range where, as soon as you run in, you're not going to touch me. I can basically hit your button before you. I can hit your button when you already put your button out there, when you're in your recovery frames, or I have enough time to block, I have enough time to hold, I have enough time to run away a bit more. It's more of a way for me to gauge how you're trying to make. It's more of a way for me to gauge how you're going to commit to something. rather than just I'm going to stay on my other side of the screen and just wait for you to run all the way in or like move forward and do something. Like I'm not going to wait around and do that the whole time. I'm going to do something to force you to do something that you don't want to do, or rather force you to come out and hit me. Like I want to force you to commit to something. Like that's what I'm going to do. That's how I play my that's how I play my defense. That's how I switch from neutral spacing. That's how I play my defensive spacing.
So defensive spacing, you know, just to clarify or you know simplify for the layman's like me, is basically it's not that it's similar in the concept that you're looking for recovery frames, that you're looking for that, but you're not doing it in a run-in fashion. You're doing it as you should hop in at some point here, Hajin, but you're doing it in a way to that you're dictating that they come to you and they commit to something, and once they do that, then you're looking for the recovery frames, because now you've kind of, with your pokes and with your keep away tools, you force them to commit to something that you know that like, okay, now I see they did this, I can have, you know, my counter punch.
Right, and there's a really elegant example that's happening right now, if you noticed. Watch what I'm doing when you wake up game. Like, if I just knock you down, I don't know. Like, whenever it happens. Yeah, sure. Like, you keep wake kicking. Like, well, I fucked up and lagged that time.
No, you got it though, but I mean, you've been doing that all day.
You see what I mean? Like, that kind of, oh, you're gonna press the button at a certain range, right? I'm gonna sit in the range where I know that mistake is gonna cost you, and I'm gonna make you pay for it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna put myself in spaces where you're gonna hurt yourself. That's the plan.
That's really important. Okay, so then what would you say you know makes a runaway game? Like one of the things we're not talking about punishing, but yeah, what would you say makes a runaway game?
Oh, runaway is actually kind of like, I don't know, you explain it.
Arrow's part.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, you want me to say?
Runaway game. We're talking runaway game. Runaway spacing game.
Runaway spacing game. Okay, one of the players that I have to use this player as an example because she's really good at it. One of the players that I helped throughout DOA for a long while. You guys know her by the name of Olivia.
Yeah.
She's an Ayane main. She's an Ayane main. She developed that style. She developed that whole runaway style on her own because her style is completely different from me. Basically, once she hits you, once she launches you, and she does her combo and knocks you back, she's not moving forward. She's going to stay on her side of the screen, and she's going to she's staying on her side of the screen, and by her doing that, you can't do anything because you're not by her, obviously. So you have no options. You have to move forward, and her job is going to be keeping you up the entire time. She's not going to let you get in for free. She's not going to let you run in for free. She knows what buttons she wants to use. She knows the ranges she wants to do them at. That style of spacing can be very strong. It can also be, really annoying as well, especially if your opponent is playing a character that totally suits that totally caters that playstyle. She mains Ayane, so that totally caters that playstyle.
So bring it back to runaway spacing.
So runaway spacing. Basically, once you hit the opponent, it doesn't even have to be a combo to knock you back. It can just be something that does a knockback, or it could be something that just like touches you, like not even stun you, it just touches you, or just does a critical stun, and they just decide to move away from you. The opponent is clearly saying, "I'm going to move away all day. I don't care about moving forward. I just want to move back, and I want you to approach me. Like my game is not going to be approaching me." So they're gonna know all the buttons.
Think about that for a second. Hold up. So this is different in the sense that, like, while aggressive spacing is looking for the earliest or near earliest opportunity to rush in and do something, right? Like, you're staying away, but as soon as you see those recovery frames are going in, for the most part. And then defensive spacing is saying, like, you're gonna come to me, and then when I see recovery frames, I'm going in. But like, it's because you're coming to me, and then I'll you know, get my damage from there.
Yeah.
The runaway
also, before you
spacing
continue
game.
on,
Go
ahead. I was going to say, before you continue, what I want to make a note about is with aggressive spacing and defensive spacing, both styles you're still learning what your opponent's habits are. You're just playing a completely different style of spacing compared to the other.
Yeah.
But you're still learning what your opponent's trying to do. You're still learning their habits. You're still gaining their rhythm.
That makes sense. It's like what CJ said. It's you're learning information. So then runaway spacing is closer to, you're using your pokes and you're using your punish moves, right? Because punish is exactly what we're talking about when you go in, when you catch somebody in their recovery.
Yeah.
That's what you're when you hit somebody in their recovery, you're kind of punishing them for whiffing that move.
Yeah.
But what they're going to do when you have a runaway spacing game is you're going to do that punishment move, whatever it is, and maybe you got a quick little thing after that, but you're using that to then regain your space from the person, your distance from the person.
Yeah.
So that each time they come in, you might get them with a 1-2 or a 1-2-3, and then you're opening that space back up, so then it's forcing them to come back at you again and kind of reset that whole process.
And I would like to note that style is actually pretty potent because when you're constantly doing that to somebody, like when I play Momiji, that's the style I play with Momiji. Like that's just the kind of style I play with Momiji. Now, when you do this to people, I wouldn't say more than once, like 2 or 3 times, they want to start getting impatient. And that's the entire point of a runaway spacing style. You want to make the opponent impatient you want to make them impatient as soon as possible. You want them to do that because all they're going to think about at that point is just getting in. They just want to get in, they want to hit you so you can stop doing it, and they want to run their game. Now, if they get in successfully and they do it, then the person that's playing the runaway spacing, it's a test for them. Do you actually have good defense, or is your defense trash, and do you just panic once you get hit?
Yeah.
If they get in on you successfully, and you hold your ground for as long as you can, and then you can break away, you find your counter hit, your opening, and you can get back into your rhythm, your runaway game, and you're all set. Your defense is pretty good there. But if you're the kind who's playing that runaway game, and you finally get hit, and you just panic, then that just tells the person who spent all that time trying to get on you, you don't have any actual defense. You just like to be on the other side of the screen, and you just want to play the runaway game.
Yeah.
And you have nothing else you can fall back to.
Okay. Well, unless you guys have anything to add, I think that's a good place to end. That wraps up our spacing conversation. I think that was a lot of good stuff, and I'm ready to kind of move on from there. I think that was. You guys got anything else?
Anything from CJ?
No, nothing for
Good, man. Good stuff, guys. Everybody, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching. Everybody in the Twitch stream, you're amazing as usual. I do have one follow-up question we're going to do, and it's a Tina-specific question from Sub-Zero Domo. And he says, would 4-6P with Tina be better for spacing than 3-6P? Or wouldn't that be better because it's +1 on block and it has good range?
I think it's slower on startup, and so it depends. Like different uses. Like it's not the same. It's not as potent a whiff punishment tool. So if someone's like jabbing like this, you're probably not going to hit them with that as well. You're going to be mostly counter hit doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say both tools. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a different tool. Like they're both decent spacing tools. It's just like you would use the shoulder more aggressively when you're trying to like get in on somebody and trying to open them up, and that they're blocking, right? That's more used for that than for actually trying to get in on somebody's hitting buttons. You wouldn't use it for hitting buttons.
Well, that matters. That matters.
He basically said what I was going to say. So they're just two different tools. Both have their uses.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, guys. That's gonna wrap it up.